We love older homes. We love the style, we love the character, we love the charm, we love all the original woodwork in often well-established and desirable neighborhoods. But buying an older home can come with several unexpected drawbacks. Unexpected, that is, unless you watch this video. My name is Phil Wells. I'm a real estate agent here in the Spokane and Coeur d'Alene area and a lover of older homes. In this video, we're going to look at the 9 things you need to be aware of and maybe be cautious of when you're looking at purchasing an older home. So let's get into it. The first thing you need to be cautious of when you're looking at an older home is the electrical system. And I'm not just talking about knob and tube here. Since we mentioned it, let's talk about knob and tube really quick. Theoretically, there's nothing wrong with knob and tube. I work with a journeyman electrician quite often, and he constantly reminds me that knob and tube has been around for 100 years. And left undisturbed, it'll likely serve out its purpose for another 100 years. The problem comes when people don't leave it alone, or they require more from the system than it was designed to deliver. People splice into it, they cover it with insulation, or they want to run an electric vehicle charger from it. And all of a sudden, you've got a fire hazard. But knob and tube isn't the only potential issue that you want to be aware of if you're looking at buying an older home. Early breaker panels, for example, Bulldog or Federal Pacific panels, are known for being hazards as their breakers simply don't trip. Undersized panels can also become an issue as you choose to add things like air conditioning and electric vehicle chargers that we just mentioned. I frequently see 60 amp panels out there in the Spokane and Coeur d'Alene area. And for those of you that aren't familiar, 200 amps is the modern standard for an electrical panel. And lastly, some things to be aware of in an electrical system on a home that's 100 years old. You're likely to encounter 100 years worth of DIY. You might find poorly done splices, loose electrical connections, undersized wires, overloaded circuits, and plenty of other non-code compliant DIY. Upgrading an electrical system can cost a lot of money. I've seen a broad range of quotes out there, anything from just a couple $1,000s all the way up to $40,000 at the high end. There is nothing stopping you getting an electrical inspection and getting quotes during your purchase inspection so you know what you're getting yourself involved in. As with anything, you can shop around for the best price, and you can often do work in a piecemeal fashion, for example, taking care of the highest risk circuits up front, and maybe dealing with others further down the line. The next potential issue, and possibly the largest ticket item out there, is the sewer. Orangeburg, cracked clay, corroded cast iron, or damaged concrete lines are all issues you might encounter while performing your sewer scope. And if you do no other inspection during your home purchase, please do a sewer scope. It costs around $200 and it can save you tens of thousands of dollars. You may find no issues in your old home's sewer line, in which case great, but likelihood is you're going to encounter a sewer that's going to require ongoing maintenance, and this is perfectly normal. A lot of older sewers have some form of root intrusion, and it's going to require those roots to be cleaned out every year or so to ensure proper flow of your sewer line. If you're new to homeownership, this might sound scary, but it really shouldn't put you off buying an older home if all you have to do is some basic routine maintenance. However, occasionally you will encounter a severely damaged sewer line. And repairing a damaged sewer line can be very expensive, particularly if you need to dig down to expose the line. Fortunately, trenchless repair is becoming more and more common. It's becoming easier and easier for companies to perform these repairs, which means it's getting cheaper and cheaper. However, it will still be expensive, so just be prepared for this. Do your sewer scope up front during your inspection before you close on the home, and who knows, you might be able to negotiate some money off the property or a repair during the inspection. The biggest thing to note when it comes to a sewer is know what you're getting into. Next up is dangerous materials. Lead and asbestos were pretty common right up until the 1980s. It is important to know that some materials only pose a health risk if you disturb them, while other materials pose a constant health risk that you should have dealt with immediately. For example, lead pipes for your drinking water is an absolute no-no. You should have that repaired immediately. Whereas a popcorn ceiling that's in good condition is only hazardous if you disturb it. That being said, it is worth considering your household. Are kids or pets likely to interact with hazardous materials more than, say, an adult would? If so, it is worth considering professional abatement in these cases. Abatement of hazardous materials is expensive because it requires specialist material and specialized licensing, but as I said before when discussing electrical, often it doesn't all need to be done at once. You can do it piecemeal, and it only needs to be done once to complete the job. So yes, this is an issue unique to homes built before the 1980s, but for the most part, it's not something you need to be overly concerned about. Most hazardous materials don't come and get you in the middle of the night. You need to disturb them in order for them to be hazardous. Again, you should be leaning on your home inspection here to flag any potentially hazardous materials, those that need to be addressed right away, and those that can be left in place until you choose to deal with them. You can also self-test for potentially hazardous materials. You can buy kits from the hardware store. For example, if you find something that your inspector missed, or if you discover something during, for example, a remodel. Next up are HVAC systems. Older homes were heated in a way that's different to how we do it today. I have, just in the past few weeks, seen furnaces powered by coal and oil that were still operational and still providing heat to that home. Often these systems are wildly inefficient compared to what we have today, and it is becoming more and more difficult to get deliveries of things like coal and oil for heating systems. Upgrading an HVAC system can be pretty expensive. It may involve running a new gas line from the street to the house. It may involve upgrading an electrical panel. For example, if you've got an older home with knob and tube, you may need to upgrade the electrical panel before you can install a new electric-powered furnace, for example. This might also be the case if you have an underpowered panel, like we discussed previously. Again, lean on your inspector here. Your inspector is going to go through the HVAC system, tell you how old it is, when it was last serviced, what sort of fuel it uses, and what its projected useful life is likely to be. If you get your inspection, it shouldn't be a surprise to you what condition your HVAC system is in when you close on your property. Next on the list is roofing. Current code permits only 2 layers of roofing before a re-roof is required. But on older homes, it's common to find multiple layers of roofs. I have seen an original cedar shake layer with 3 layers of asphalt shingles on top. That was extremely heavy, and it actually caused some bowing in the roofline. You're also likely to encounter older roof decking systems, for example skip sheathing, which adds to the cost of a re-roof because they need to put a new roof deck down. In certain cases, for example the case of the heavy roof that I mentioned before, some rafters may require replacement or a little bit of framing to ensure the roof is strong again, all of which adds to the cost of re-roofing a property. If you've ever replaced a roof, you'll know it's expensive, and as with anything, you can shop around for the best price, but sometimes older homes have a way of throwing a curveball for you to increase the cost of an already expensive item like a roof. Again, a good inspector is going to flag these issues with the roof, so you should know what you're getting into ahead of time. Next up, let's talk about insulation, or rather the lack of insulation. It's not uncommon to find that your older home has no insulation at all. This will lead to higher utility costs versus a modern home of the same square footage. That's just a fact. There are certain things you can do as a homeowner though to keep your home warm. Sealing up gaps and retrofitting insulation where possible will go a long way towards keeping your home warm. But remember what I said before though, when talking about insulation and electrical wires, it doesn't always mix. So consult with a professional before you cover any electrical wires, just in case. In certain cases, you may find that your home does come with insulation, but that insulation is hazardous. Vermiculite insulation, for example, is known to contain asbestos and is often found in the attic space. Likelihood is this will need abating. But what I've been saying throughout about leaning on your inspector applies here too. Modern inspectors come with modern equipment. Often inspectors have thermal lenses. They can see if your walls are insulated, or they can spot gaps in insulation if your property has been retrofitted with insulation. They can also inspect for covered knob and tube wiring, They can also look at the insulation that is visible and give some sort of indication whether or not it's likely to contain asbestos or not. Next up is plumbing and piping, not to be confused with the sewer that we've already discussed. And we're gonna start with lead. Here is an EPA graphic with all the locations that lead likes to lurk in your home. For this reason, I highly recommend, whether you get your house entirely repiped or not, using a reverse osmosis system to filter your drinking water, because lead was used everywhere. You can also self-test the quality of your water to make sure any lead present is below safe levels. For me, I personally think there is no safe level of lead, which is why I use an RO system, and I change my filters annually. Supply lines aren't the only concern though. Drain lines can also be an issue. Just recently, I saw a completely corroded cast iron drain line that would have just dumped water into the basement. So again, listen to your inspector here. They're going to inspect all the pipes and plumbing that are visible inside the house and give you the rundown on what condition they're in and whether or not they're likely to contain hazardous materials. Plumbers are not cheap. In fact, they're widely considered to be the most expensive trade out there. So knowing what you're getting yourself into when it comes to plumbing and piping is essential when it comes to buying an older home. Next, let's talk about foundations. Paying for a new foundation is usually out of the question. Better off just demolishing the property and starting again at that point. So, you'll want to make sure the foundation that you do buy is solid. That being said, a crack in a foundation doesn't necessarily always warrant replacement, and particular types of foundation aren't necessarily always a problem. With older homes in the Spokane and Coeur d'Alene area, you're likely to encounter a home with a stone foundation. And these foundations are for the most part great. There's nothing wrong with them. In fact, they're likely to last longer than any of the foundations on modern homes. Just look at the 1,000-year-old homes over in Europe that are built on stone foundations that are still in use today. That being said, a lot of people don't maintain their stone foundations, so they look disheveled. So at some point during your ownership of a home with a stone foundation, you're going to need the help of a skilled mason to seal up the cracks between the stones, both inside and out, to keep the foundation draft free and looking good. And when it comes to older concrete foundations, cracks are common. In fact, 9 out of 10 times these cracks will not be a problem at all. There are certain types of cracks in concrete foundations that inspectors are trained to look for, and they will flag if they see anything that suggests any sort of movement. If something on your foundation does flag, then it would behoove you to get a further inspection done by a structural engineer so that you know exactly what you're signing up for. Lastly, let's talk about insurance. I have heard of cases of insurance companies dropping people simply because their home was old. In all of those cases, a couple of phone calls later, and they are covered again by a new provider, but they had to go through the rigmarole of getting recovered after they'd been dropped. In a region such as ours with a lot of historic homes, it is difficult to imagine insurance companies everywhere suddenly not insuring older homes. I personally would continue to live in older homes because I like the character of them and I like the neighborhoods that they're often in, but this wouldn't be a complete video if I didn't mention every risk associated with buying an older home. That's it for this video. What are the common themes here? Get an inspection, understand your home's systems, and expect maintenance. What's scary usually for people is the unknown, not the actual issues themselves. Old homes are often so old these days that a lot of issues have been taken care of by previous owners, and you're unlikely to encounter a home with every single issue listed in this video. But you won't know unless you get an inspection. Buying a 1920s Craftsman or a 1930s Art Deco cottage with incredible woodwork, original hardwood floors, a beautiful fireplace only minutes from the nearest park is an incredible way to live. And if that's your dream, don't be put off. Just know the risks, price them out, and buy it. You won't regret it. Thank you for watching. My name is Phil Wells. If you are interested in buying a historic home, or any home for that matter, in the Spokane or Coeur d'Alene area, please reach out to me. My details will be in the description to this video, and I'd be honored to hear from you.